5-year-old Harmony Montgomery disappears off the face of the earth in December of 2019, and no one even starts looking for 2 years.
The father, Adam Montgomery, is scheduled to go on trial for the murder of his daughter. We have an award-winning Boston TV reporter to help us understand this case.
I've been doing this for 40 years. It's the most ghoulish thing that I have ever come across.
When Harmony Montgomery disappeared, her father went on with his life like nothing had even happened. That was until people started asking questions. I'm Lainey Law.
And I'm attorney Andrew Myers, and joining us today, hi, Bob Ward.
Hey, Andy. Hey, Lainey.
Bob Ward is a well-known Boston TV reporter with Boston 25. He's been working with them for years and years and years. Bob specializes in covering criminal law and criminal cases. Bob has won 10 Emmys, among many, many, many awards that he has received. He has gotten the FBI Director's Community Leadership Award. Bob, what made you get into the criminal side of reporting?
You know, I just find matters of law and criminal justice system probably the most interesting aspect of news reporting, but also the most important, because what happens in the criminal courts affects so many of us, and it's just important for people to understand how the law works, how victims and their families are treated in court. And also on the other side of it, I think it's important for people to understand how crimes are investigated and why crimes sometimes can go unsolved for such a long period of time.
Yeah, that's always really very sad. And in a minute, we're going to talk about one murder that is still unsolved. But Bob, you really have New England-wide experience. You're from New England. You have worked in Providence. You have worked in Manchester, New Hampshire, where this case is based. And now you've been in Boston for many, many years. So you really have a lot of background on New England, don't you?
It's interesting, Andy. You and I worked together at WMUR way back in the days, back in the 1980s, and that was my first TV job. And everywhere I worked at those TV stations in northern New England, southern New England, and now in Boston, these unbelievable cases have come up that I've just never forgotten about. You know, back when we were at MUR, I remember Christopher Wilder. Remember that case? Yeah. We covered that, and there were so many just like that. I left before Pamela Smart. I missed that one, but I went down.
You and me both. Yeah.
I was in Rhode Island when the New Bedford Highway killings happened, and then I've been in Boston since 1996, and it's just unbelievable the amount of national crime stories that have happened right here in our own backyard.
Were you at the Manchester TV station when Bernhard Goetz, the New York subway shooter, turned himself in to the Concord police? Remember that?
I sure do. I think I don't know if I was the assignment editor back then or if I started reporting at that point, but it was very, very early in my career. And I remember that happened over a weekend. And when that news broke, it was shocking. Here we were in this tiny TV station in Manchester, and this case that was being covered globally landed right in our backyard in Concord. He just walked in and turned himself in.
Right in our backyard. He just walked right into the Concord, New Hampshire Police Department and turned himself in. And it had been a national story then, you know, all these subway shootings in New York City, you know, where all the networks are based. But so anyhow, I want to get to this case, and I want to just go over a few notes. I don't even know where to start with this case. So we'll just start with Harmony Montgomery. Beautiful little girl, was born in Massachusetts on June 7th of 2014. Her father was Adam Montgomery, and her mother was Crystal Sorry. And the poor girl had a tough life. According to my notes, she had been removed from her mother's home 3 times. Both of the parents had substance abuse problems. She was removed from Crystal Sorry's house when she was only 2 months old in August of 2014. Then she went back. She was removed again in April of 2015. Removed, went back in 2017. Only lived with her mother until January of 2018, when she is released. When she's removed from Crystal Story's home again for a 3rd time. And so at that point, I guess she was in the custody of Massachusetts DCF. At the time she was born, I think I left out of my brief timeline that her father was in jail on a charge of murdering, or I'm sorry, not murdering. Her father was in jail on a charge of shooting a guy in the head during a drug deal. So
It was
that
almost a murder. It was it could have
yeah,
been a murder. That guy was
Shooting
shot
in the
in the face.
head, murder.
Right.
was
Right.
just what a life for this girl. What a life for this girl. And then, at some point in February of 2019, poor Harmony was given custody over to her father, who had very, very, very little experience with. Do you want to pick up the timeline there, Bob?
Yeah. When he reached out and said he wanted custody of Harmony, I don't think that she had met her father more than 8 or 9 times. And it was Crystal bringing her to a jail to meet her father when Crystal was able. I don't know if that was Crystal every single time or if maybe foster parents did that as well. But how sad is that? And then it gets
according to the brief research I did, at the time that Adam was awarded custody of Harmony, he'd only seen Harmony a total of 40 hours. 40 hours. That was the basis of the father-daughter relationship when the court granted custody to him. And during those 40 hours, it was all only under supervision, as you pointed out, probably every time in jail. And before he was awarded custody, the way it was described, even in the court notes, was that Adam's interest in the girl was only sporadic and inconsistent. So that was the basis.
When you get down to the whole, he was eventually granted sole custody of Harmony in a court hearing that is still very controversial. There's a judge in Massachusetts who's just written a book about this. I'm anxious to read it because I need to know more about that. I've covered more of the criminal end of this, but Crystal Sorey tells her account that on the day that this was being decided, she had a son that was also being adopted, and she had to make up her mind. The 2 hearings were happening at the same time. She could not be in 2 places at once.
Are you serious?
Right. So she was.
That's amazing.
She says, and I've heard this from another source too, that she chose to go for whatever reason to the hearing where her son was going to be adopted, and she registered complaints and was trying to get somebody to delay the adoption of Harmony, but all that was just set aside and it went forward, and Crystal wasn't even there to register in person her objections on why she did not want Adam to have Harmony, because she was fighting it. She did not want Adam to have Harmony because she was aware of his background, both criminally and his issues with substance abuse, and she didn't think that would make any sense, and she lost.
Yeah, there's really no good reason that anybody can come up with, and it's not me saying this. I've read a bit about this case, and I'd like to read that book that you're talking about.
Yeah.
That the courts in these family law matters generally tend to favor the natural parents of the child, and in my experience in the law, and I don't specialize in family law at all, so I'm no expert in that area. But in most of what I do in the law, there are many, 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 many factors. For example, in a negligence case, duty, breach, cause, harm, foreseeability. What's the legal foreseeability? What's the fact? There are a lot of different factors that we look at in my area before we make a determination. And I'm just wondering what other factors should have been that were not considered in giving. And as you pointed out, Adam had a criminal background. He was known to be someone who had an abuse problem. And sure, we all hope that people have redemption. But if someone is not there, should they really be considered as the person to award the child to? And history told us that decision, at the very least, was questionable.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, how much weight do you give the reunification with a natural parent if the parent is not suitable to be a parent? How is that all weighed? The record of this case, from what I understand, is sealed up, so we can't see what was said, what the arguments were. But there have been reports. The state of New Hampshire, Governor Sununu issued a scathing report about Massachusetts and what happened. But there's a lot of blame to go around here. It's natural for one state to look at the other and blame the other. And in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, not just this case, but so many others, that they're always having these border skirmishes. So, but there's a lot of blame to go around, because once she was placed up in New Hampshire, there should have been a safety net where people were checking on Harmony and seeing for themselves the conditions that she was in. And that fell through the cracks as well. So she, in my view, Harmony was failed by the state of Massachusetts with the placement into New Hampshire, but also failed by the state of New Hampshire because she did not have the supervision that she should have had.
I agree 100%. Now, before we get into that timeline, Harmony was granted to her father in February of 2019. And as the court records show, she died in December of 2019. So she didn't live much longer after that. But the last time we did a podcast on this, we did a podcast on the fact that the Massachusetts legislature actually formed a study commission earlier in 2023 to look at what is going on in the courts and to take a look at what you just said. There should be a weighing of various different factors when they're granting custody. We're going to have to do a follow-up on that one, Lainey. Make a note of that one, that we're going to follow. But the legislature, this case has had such impact that the legislature stopped and said, we failed and we got to take a look at it. So now you pointed out, Bob, that the system failed. What happened between February of 2019 when Harmony was given to her father, and then December of 2019 when she went missing, and we all believe that she's gone. The last I understand that her mother, Crystal Sorey, saw the little girl was during a FaceTime phone call during Easter time in April of 2019. What happened in those months between then and then when she was gone?
Well, that FaceTime is so important because, she's having that visit at Easter, and she wanted to know, Crystal said she knew something was wrong because her daughter was not acting herself, was being timid, and she looked like she was hurt, and she couldn't get any straight answers from Adam. And then after that, she never heard from her daughter again. That was it. And she would reach out to Adam or Kayla, wanting to talk to, Harmony and wanting to see Harmony, but there was always something came up and it just never happened. And it was that entire time in 2019 that things were happening. And Crystal's instincts as a mom were 100% correct. Something was going on. And that's the time frame that I believe that Harmony was let down by the system in New Hampshire, because there were caseworkers, social workers who were assigned to her case that could go in and see her. But, that just didn't happen. So Go ahead. No, so the next, if I get my timeline correct, the next thing that we know is that in the summer, I believe in July, Adam's brother is meeting, is in New Hampshire. I believe they're at the Guilford Street house. And he goes in and he sees Harmony and Kayla and Adam and the other kids, and he sees bruising. He sees that she's got a black eye, and he asks what happened. And Adam tells a story about how he hit her, that she wasn't, I think it was that he was going to take a shower and he asked Harmony to watch the newborn baby for 5 minutes. And when he came out of the shower, the baby was crying, and he just lost it and just belted her. And,
oh my God.
She was 5 years old, maybe just turned 5. She was really 4. And that was his excuse. And so that stuck with Kevin. And that is the source of the assault charge that Adam Montgomery now faces. And, even with that, you would think, I don't remember if he reported that to anyone. I don't think he did until after she was missing. But, where are the social workers? Why did they see the bruising? I mean,
one of the things I don't understand was that apparently, New Hampshire did claim that it picked up the ball at some point, and it has been reported that the New Hampshire DCYF, or the Department of Children, Youth, and Families in New Hampshire, they picked up the ball, and they claim that they did visit the home 3 times in the months before the December 2019 visitation, and several times they said she looked fine. She was watching TV. They said hi. She said hi. But at one point, apparently, there were some injuries, and it was explained away that she was playing with some kind of a laser wand or something like that with her brother, and there was a bruise in her face. So that was explained away. So it's hard to know without actually having been there. Did the social workers fail to pick up on clues that they should have picked up on? Or did Adam and the other kids in the house somehow stage it so that they fooled them all? I can't figure, not having been there, I can't figure it all out. Do you have any insight into that one?
No, I really don't. But I mean, again, I understand the social workers are overworked and underfunded. I totally understand that. But again, it's like what we were talking about with with the adoption and the weight that's given to Adam's past. Well, why wasn't that weight given when Harmony is at the house and has bruises on her face? Months before, Crystal could tell something was wrong over FaceTime. How come the social worker couldn't put that together? And Kayla was using at that point. I think Adam was too. They must have done a really good job of cleaning themselves up, and they must have known the social worker was coming so they could stage something to make it look a certain way. I'm just guessing here. I don't know this for a fact. And this,
I thought that I thought that they were supposed to make unannounced visits. I thought they were supposed to make unsupervised visits.
That's what I thought too. That's what I thought too. And
I've read contrary things, that one of the visits apparently was just kind of a surprise visit, and that's when that's the time that they found the bruise, and that's the time that the kids explained, oh well, they were playing. So I don't understand that. The other thing I don't understand is apparently they're able to give a date, December of 2019. What I don't understand, Bob, to you, is how can a little girl who's only 5 years old, how can she disappear and nobody notices, nobody says a word, nobody does anything for 2 years? How does that happen? I just don't get it. Couldn't Crystal Sorey have figured it out? I understand that she did reach out. She went up to Manchester from Massachusetts and drove around to different addresses, and she was locked out. But be that as it may, how can it possibly be that this beautiful little girl was missing for 2 years and nothing happened? How can that happen?
I think part of it was the fact that Kayla was still cashing the Social Security checks that were destined for Harmony long after Harmony was gone. So in the system, everything looks normal, right? The checks are being cashed. The parents, Kayla and Adam, are caring for her. There's no red flag there. And I think for some of this, we're up against COVID, and maybe the social workers weren't doing the same amount of visits that they were doing. I remember that. I remember one of the social workers gave an interview and talked about how difficult it was because there were so many people who had quit their jobs and COVID had taken place. It's still, you're right. How does she just fall off the face of the earth?
Well, during COVID, we had this newfangled thing that you and I probably didn't use very much before, called Zoom.
Exactly.
I mean, as an attorney, the courts at first went, "Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We're not supposed to do anything. We're not supposed to meet each other. They're shutting down all but the big box stores." But the courts, both in Mass and New Hampshire, the only two states in which I am a member of the bar, they both started Zooming hearings and conferences. And I remember doing Zoom conferences in my house in the kitchen. And so if the courts and everybody else in the world started using Zoom, why couldn't the social workers? I mean, everybody has a computer these days.
And we know that they had a computer because that was a Zoom FaceTime or something at Easter when Adam, the last time that Crystal saw her daughter. So we know that the technology was in the house one way or the other, whether it was a cell phone, a computer, or a tablet. We know that there was the technology, the ability to do just that.
And I didn't stop practicing law. Clients would call me and I would Zoom with them. Instead of them coming into my office, we would Zoom. We would set up an appointment. Okay, I'll see you next Wednesday at 10 o'clock. I'll send you a Zoom invite. So the world didn't stop.
No.
It's true the world slowed down. It's true there were challenges. I'm not disputing that. But there's really no excuse. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry. I don't buy the excuse that it was COVID, because
I do remember one other thing is that Adam and Kayla were telling people that Adam had brought Harmony back to Massachusetts to be with Crystal in 2019, right around Thanksgiving, because I interviewed Kayla's mother about the last time she saw Harmony, and the family was homeless. I know I'm getting ahead of the timeline a little bit, but
that's okay.
It was Thanksgiving. The family came by. Harmony was there. They were living in a car, and she said that they had asked if they could move in, and it was Thanksgiving. And then they came back. I don't remember what she said about what the decision was or not, but they came back. I think she said they could not. They came back about a week later, and Harmony was not there. But Kayla said, well, Harmony is now with her mother in Massachusetts. So it could be just a simple thing with Adam and Kayla telling people that she has gone, she is with Crystal, she's in Massachusetts, and an overburdened system in New Hampshire just never followed up. That may have been what happened, Andy.
Right. But, someone somewhere along the line could have said, well, wait a minute. So let's go down and check with Crystal Sorey. I mean, I don't know. I know during a lot of this period of time, Adam and Kayla were living in a car. At some point they became homeless. They were living in a car. So I don't know, maybe Crystal Sorey was living in a car too. I don't know that end of the story, but I mean,
no, she was living in Mass. I want to say she was in Salem, and they were living in a car. This is the timeline of it. So the family's they get evicted from Guilford Street right before Thanksgiving. So they're living in a car. That's why they showed up on the west side of Manchester at the mother's house. Then they leave and then they come back. And that's how, and it was during that time that Harmony in December was killed before New Year's of 2019 going into 2020.
So I do want to say, though, like realistically, 5-6 years old, she should have been starting kindergarten or something.
Yeah, right.
7 first grade. And I don't know. I feel like not realizing that she's gone for so long is a failure on that part too, because how do you not realize that this kid isn't enrolled in any kind of academic, establishment?
Right.
Unless
New Hampshire, accepted the idea that she was living in Massachusetts, but where's the check?
With record, and what records?
Exactly.
Wasn't that one of the things?
COVID strikes what, in March of 2020?
Yep.
So it's like immediately. So she's gone in December 2019. And then the story is out there that, she's living in Massachusetts now. And then after that, they're going from place to place. They're not staying in one place very long either. According to the court documents, we know where they are up until about March of 2020, when COVID is just coming in. And that's when we think Harmony's body was disposed of in Massachusetts.
Yeah. One of the things you said, Lainey, before about being enrolled in school, one of the problems is in New Hampshire, kindergarten is not required.
Wow.
So when
I think
somewhere in the story, the police actually checked, or DCYF checked, and they did make a phone call to Adam as to why she was not enrolled in kindergarten, because it's not required in New Hampshire, but it's a better practice if you're a parent. It's a better thing, especially if you're working. It gives you time. So that was in fact one of the clues, but that was like passed over and not paid attention to until much later in the game. Again, I don't really understand why it was and how it took so long, but Crystal Sorey didn't call the Manchester Police Department until November 18th of 2021. November 18th of 2021, she calls Manchester Police Department and says, geez, I haven't seen my daughter for a long time. And I want to know where she is. And Bob, why was it that the Manchester Police didn't even start investigating until December 27th, like more than a month after Crystal called them and reported that she hadn't been seen? Do you have any insight into that?
Question. And she, Crystal says that she called earlier than that, and she was trying to alert people in authority, whether it's the police or social workers, whatever, where is Harmony? And she was getting the cold shoulder. She said people didn't take her seriously because of her addiction issues. And that if anybody did look, it was just a cursory thing. Nobody took it seriously until November. Crystal said that she actually went out and tried to find people. And that's how she knew that Kayla and Adam had broken up, that he was with somebody else, but she couldn't find him.
Right.
And what could she do? And finally, the Manchester Police Department, whoever it was she talked to, and I'm only going off of what Crystal has said, finally they took it seriously enough to have a complaint filed and investigate and see, what she was saying was accurate. And it turned out to be 100% accurate.
Right. And then
it's
the Manchester
ridiculous. Sorry, I keep talking over you, Andrew. No, I was going to say with Crystal that realistically, obviously she was having her own struggles, but at the end of the day, she was the only person that was even looking out for Harmony's well-being, and you have her sent to her father who has violent charges against him. I know obviously struggling with addiction, and I don't know like her, if she had a criminal history, but imagine if she wasn't even, it could have been so much. I can't really say it would have been so much worse because obviously it's as bad as it could have gotten, but at least she was paying attention, and that's one of the sadder parts here. One of the things that we talked about before we started, when we were showing that slideshow of the pictures, you had mentioned that the pictures of Harmony had been when she was still in foster care, and you can see how happy and healthy she is. And it's, I don't know. I mean, this whole case is disturbing, but it's just disturbing to see that even though, despite the tribulations with her mother, she still cared and wanted her to live a happy, healthy life. And
Yeah, her
it's
foster
just
mom,
crazy.
I've spoken to her many times. She has not done an interview, doesn't feel comfortable going public, but just wants the world to know that Harmony was loved and cared for in a brief period of time of her life when she was in foster care. And those pictures right there that you're showing where she's happy and smiling, she got the doll and she's all ready for school, first day of school. Those pictures were taken when she was in foster care. And those foster parents loved Harmony, and they are absolutely heartsick about what has happened. They were there during this whole process, and they were part of the, they knew what was happening when it happened, when Crystal was trying to reclaim Harmony for her own and was trying to fight Adam. The foster parents were part of that whole thing, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. It's one of the worst things I've ever heard. And one of the things about this whole story, and it kind of dawned on me when I covered the gun charges, I covered that trial of Adam Montgomery, and I was just watching the quality of the witnesses that came in and took the stand, and it really is it was a glimpse into a world that I have a hard time understanding. This world of addiction and the way the terrible toll addiction, hard drugs have taken on an entire community. And here you have these children that are born to these people that are in addiction, that are the real victims here, and not just Harmony, who lost her life, but others who are losing their lives and their childhoods to this addiction and the circumstances that surround them. It's really hard to fathom, and it's hard for us to understand all of that. And I know I struggled with that when I covered that first trial, and I'm going to struggle with it when I cover Adam's trial too, because it's a world we just cannot, we just can't see it, and we just can't understand it, because thankfully we don't have those issues. But it's real. That family was living in a car. I've seen other families living in cars up in New Hampshire too, and with children, and it's really eye-opening.
I want to go back to something that you said before, but before I do, I just, it's hard for me to fathom what you just said, that there are people living in their cars, or even less than that, Bob. And I think about that when it's as cold as it is as we're recording this podcast. It's just so cold right now. It's not record cold, but it's like, it's hard for me to fathom. And I know we're all trying to be more understanding, to understand the addiction issue. And I know that we're all trying to give people the benefit of whatever doubt we can and hope for redemption. But I just, when a court is faced with a determination as to what they need to do, shouldn't the fact that people just are incapable to overcome those issues, and shouldn't the fact that people just are facing these issues and they're just not ready, shouldn't that be something that they consider? But what I want to go back to was you were talking about the foster family. And Bob, I've read a lot. As you know, I like to read the newspaper. I read the news online, but I'm old fashioned. I like to actually read, newspapers. The thing that you were talking about the foster parents, that's something I have not read. Did I miss it, or do you have some inside information there?
No, this is just insight that I have. They have not gone public with their story. I'm just sharing with you the tip of the iceberg that they've told me, and they don't mind that being out there.
I've always known you to have a lot of sources. I've followed your career, and you always seem to have inside information about a lot of stories. So you're having talked to these foster parents, and we certainly don't want to out them, or I would never make any attempt to talk. I would never. But that's really something that's unique about you. You're not just a guy that, grabs the AP wire and runs and stands in front of the courthouse and say, "Oh, I'm Joe Smith in front of the courthouse." So tell me some more insights that you have about this case. You you know Manchester, New Hampshire, and you went to Manchester, New Hampshire, and you talked to people. You went to the homes where they had lived. Give us some more insight that you have. I don't want you to break any confidences, but just give us some of the insight that you have about this case, please.
Well, I don't know if I have any insight into, how this all went down. It's just like my background, and from talking to people, I have a view of the playing field here on how this all happened. Andy, you and I used to live not far away from Union Street when we worked together. Andy and I were roommates when we worked at Channel 9 for
briefly.
a period of time. That's only a few blocks away from where Union Street is and where that apartment is that Harmony's body was brought to. And it's a different world now than it was back in the 80s when we lived there. It is. But, it just seems to me that in Manchester is dealing with a very, very serious problem with opioid addiction.
Yeah, when you even just like walking around, anybody in New Hampshire, if you've been to Manchester, on one of the main streets where all the bars are, Elm Street, you see it. You go a couple blocks over to where the housing is, and you see it. We have our little tent street, as bad as it is, and
it's taking a real toll on the community. And Harmony is emblematic of what is actually still going on. What was going on then, and what's going on right now. So in the middle of all that, with Harmony's case, and she has this horrible home life with Adam and Kayla, and just absolute chaos. People are using drugs right out in the open. In the gun case, there were guns left out in the open with children around, with parents that are passed out on sofas. In the middle of all that, and it's about as bleak as I can imagine. And then she lost her life as they were living in a car. Just before all that took place, there was this brief moment in time when Harmony was cared for just like any other kid and celebrated just like any other kid. Got a birthday cake, had pictures taken on the first day of school, had a nice home, nice bed to come home to at the end of the day. They were not blood relatives. They were foster parents with really big hearts, and they wanted what was best for Harmony Montgomery. And they fought for her as best that they could, and they are devastated by what's happened here.
Yeah, they loved the girl as though she was their own, and they just. I can't believe I can't put myself in those parents' shoes, and I've never been a judge. I never will be a judge, but I can't put myself in the shoes of a court that made the determination that they did. Now, sure, accuse me of hindsight and. Fine, hindsight's perfect. But I'm again, where there was a family that you described like that, Bob, that loved the girl, dressed her up, gave her a birthday cake, made sure she was dressed nicely, and all that. I can't imagine what factors would make a court, I'll say, because I'm a member of the bar and I have to be really careful about what I say. I just don't understand this case, and I'm not alone. A lot of people don't understand this case. The Massachusetts legislature doesn't understand this case because they set up a special commission that Laney, make a note. We're going to have to, but I mean, that's incredible. So Bob, take us back to Manchester and some of the, you told us that you had gone to the house where they had lived together, where on the west side.
Yeah. So I've been a couple of these locations. So do you mean the Guilford Street house?
Yeah.
All right. So I was at the Guilford Street house and the FBI was searching it, and they were searching it, 2 years after the Montgomerys were actually living there. So it's on a residential street, not a big house, certainly not a small house, but a nicely kept house with a driveway on the side and a nice big backyard. And we were there. It was cold. It was like this time of year. It was in January a couple of years ago, and it was freezing cold. And the FBI had in the backyard, they had warming tents set up where they were trying to thaw parts of the ground because they were looking for Harmony, thinking she was.
I remember that.
They were looking inside the house and just looking for any kind of evidence that they could. The people that lived there and the neighbors did not appreciate it. Did not appreciate the media, and they did not help us when we went in there when the crime scene tape came down and we were allowed to go in there and start knocking on doors. I didn't get very far at all. In fact, they called the police on me when I went to go do a stand-up, and I was standing literally on their driveway, like 6 inches in. One of my feet was on their driveway, and they called the cops. And the reason I know that is we were still there to do our story at 6 o'clock, and all of a sudden the police show up, and we're thinking, oh, are they back to, they find something, they're coming back. And I went over to talk to the police officer, and then the tenants came out and they said, that's him. And it was a scene.
Man.
But yeah.
Did anything happen? Did you get any
Nothing
charges? Or
happened. I told him, I said, look, I was unaware. I didn't mean to step on anybody's private property. You know,
no, of course not.
They were fine.
Yeah.
Everybody was fine, but it was in that moment, you know, and maybe they felt like they were besieged. And to look at it from their point of view, you know, the FBI just went through their apartment, and now the media is, you know, we're the hounds at the door. And maybe that's all it was. I didn't take it personally. It's kind of the hazard of the job.
People don't like reporters for whatever reason. But now I recall not only the Guilford Street search, but then there was a search, and this is horrible. Yeah. This is just awful. There was a search over on Union Street, and they found a refrigerator, and they brought the refrigerator out as evidence.
It was brutal. So, you know, we were out there, and we're watching them go in and out of that house, and then all of a sudden they bring the refrigerator out, and it was chilling because, you know, Harmony's still not found. And to see a refrigerator come out, it was reminiscent of seeing a body bag or a coffin come from a place. And you know instinctively why they would want to look at that refrigerator. It was chilling. And then at the end of the day, they came and got the DPW, and they were lifting up the sewer grates, and they were sending in cameras into the sewer grates too. Now, at the time when I was standing out there covering that, I got to be honest with you, I couldn't put together why they were searching Union Street, because the last time anybody saw Harmony was in 2019, and they weren't at Union Street until 2020, and nobody saw Harmony at that time. And I remember thinking, why are they doing this? Because this would mean that her body was in there. But that can't be true, right? That can't possibly be true.
Well, the other disturbing thing that might explain it all is now the prosecutors say they do have biological evidence, and B, one of the other pieces of evidence that they pulled, and I don't know where they pulled it, was a cooler, a red cooler.
Right.
Which, you know, it's awful.
At the time covering it, when I covered it, and they're tearing apart Union Street, in my head, Andy, I couldn't accept that a father might have his 5-year-old daughter's body months after the murder in another apartment. It was like I couldn't accept it. And I was thinking, well, you know, they must be just trying to nail things down, just trying to timeline out when she was last seen and proving that she was never in that apartment. I got to be honest with you, until that affidavit came out and it described what allegedly happened to Harmony, and then what happened to her body afterwards. Yeah. Not only was I mortified, I was shocked, because it's the most ghoulish thing. I've been doing this for 40 years. It's the most ghoulish thing that I have ever come across. And it's just so hard to understand. And it's going to be interesting to see how the jury responds to that when this trial happens.
Well, it had to have been a horrible thing for you. Not only is it just a horrible thing for anybody, but you have 2 kids. They're now all grown up, but you have 2 kids, a daughter and a son, right?
Right.
And so just to think that, you know, to see that the evidence in the case is a cooler and a refrigerator, and now the prosecutors say they have biological evidence. You know, you can just put it all together, 1, 2, 3. But now, the most, unless you want to get into some more of the details, which I would welcome, now the trial is coming up, but there's some doubt about the trial. The defense has brought a motion to sever the 2 different cases. There was a case for the assault that we talked about, and there was another case for the murder. And at one point, the attorneys for both sides agreed to join the 2 together. But then what happened is that just very recently, and I'm talking 5 days before we're recording this podcast, the defense filed a motion to sever the 2, saying that it's prejudicial and unfair, and it's based on new evidence. So I don't know, Bob, from your experience, do you think that'll go through, or do you think the trial will happen?
The murder trial?
Yeah.
On time?
Yeah.
I do think it's going to happen on time. I don't know if they're going to sever it or not. I have no idea. I think the defense makes a compelling case, and you know, that's something that for a judge to decide. But I do think it's going to go, maybe not on February 6th when it's supposed to begin, but maybe, you know, sometime in February it'll start. You know, if they decide to sever it, the government says that they want to go with the assault case first. And they could go immediately from that into the homicide case, and they could do everything in a month They were thinking the homicide case would take a month anyway. I think that might be a little optimistic, but because I think you'd have to choose another jury, right? That alone is going to take a long time.
Well, yeah, the jury selection is supposed to start on the 6th. The way the New Hampshire courts operate is that they don't give you a trial date. They give you a jury selection date.
Okay.
And so you select the jury. And, you know, in some run-of-the-mill trials like I've done, you select the jury in a day and you start the next day. But in a case like this, you do a lot of voir dire, which is asking questions of the jurors. What do you know about the case? Despite what you know about the case, can you be unbiased? Do you have any bias against, you know, people that have tattoos? Seriously, questions like that are asked.
Yeah.
So you get the jury date, and then after the jury is selected, which can take time, then you get a trial date. Now, as a practical matter, the courts want to do that right away because, you know, no jury wants to sit around and wait. Although I've known jurors that had to sit around and wait for as long as a month. So the real question that's posed to the court now is, and there are 2 court rules on this, you know, what do we do? Are these 2 separate and distinct things for which we really do need 2 separate trials? If we hold the assault trial first and he's convicted, is it prejudicial? Does it bias the jury to try him on a murder trial? So this is kind of a real log that was thrown under the legs of the court. I guess the reason, Bob, was because Kayla Montgomery, Adam's girlfriend at the time, has changed her testimony and talked more about the abuse. Earlier, she was covering for Adam and not saying a whole lot, and now she's talking more about, you know, him hitting the little girl. So because there's a change in her testimony, this is, you know, brought a roadblock. As you've pointed out before, she's been a problematic witness from the start, hasn't she?
Right. She sure has. At first, she refused to speak. Then when she did speak, she allegedly lied. Then she was brought in front of a grand jury and lied again and was brought up on perjury charges. So all that is fair game for the defense. And she is the star witness. And try to remember, Harmony has not been found. So who are the witnesses that are lining up against Adam Montgomery? Well, you have Kayla, who's got her own legal problems. You know, she's got the Social Security issues. She's, you know, the Social Security check thing where she was cashing Harmony's checks. I should say not Social Security, but assistance checks from the state of New Hampshire.
It's child support, yeah.
Child support, yeah. She was cashing those checks well beyond the time that she was last seen. So she's got her own legal problems. She's got her own problems with the truth. And if a skilled defense attorney can attack her credibility, then what do you have? Because the information about the actual murder of Harmony Montgomery comes from Kayla, who was in the car, according to her testimony.
Right.
Everything else that comes afterwards, like DNA in the ceiling and all that, all stems from that. So if they can get Kayla knocked out, maybe they can question the veracity of other things in the case.
Right.
I don't know. I think they have a pretty strong case with or without Kayla at this point. And if the jury says that she's making up a lie about the assault in the car, well, there is DNA that they found in the places that she said things happened. And they also have that video or surveillance pictures of the U-Haul crossing the bridge down here in Massachusetts when they think that Harmony's body was disposed of in Revere. So there are other things that corroborate what she said. But
2 things come to mind as you were talking. I'm sorry. 2 things came to mind as you were talking. One was, as awful as it is, as you pointed out, the body has never been recovered. But A, do you need a body if you have biological material? And B, it makes me think, I want to stay on track. I don't want to talk about another case, but it makes me think of the awful case of Anna Walsh, who disappeared one night. And I love the way the reporters always say, well, they've never found a body. But they found blood in the basement. They found a bloody hacksaw, and the guy goes online and he's doing Google searches as to how long does it take for a body to smell? How do I cover up a body? So, I mean, do you really need a body?
Exactly. You know, it's interesting, right? Because that is always a question, that you need a body to support a homicide charge. And it's rare that you don't. Yet we have 2 major cases right now, Anna Walsh and Harmony Montgomery. They're going to go forward without a body. So it's not as if the system isn't prepared to meet that. It just means that they
Right.
need more evidence. And there does seem to be a lot of evidence in this case. But all I'm saying is if they sever these two cases and somehow are able to get a not guilty on the assault, because that also, the star witness is Kayla, but also Adam's brother, who did not witness the assault, but is talking about something that he was told by his brother. Well, and Kevin has his own issues with substance abuse,
Yeah.
and may have some issues with credibility. If they can cast doubt on that, and there's a not guilty in that, so conversely from what the defense is fearing, if the strategy would be, if somehow you can get that assault case knocked out, doesn't that strengthen their position going forward for the homicide case? So
I guess so, but it's
not strategy, and I guess that's why this is happening.
You should have gone to law school, because that's a good thought that you had there. You should have gone to law school. I think you have this nailed.
Probably sometimes myself.
I think that you really have the analysis nailed as much as the attorneys do, and I think that when they came in and they brought this last minute motion in this past week, I think that you probably could have argued that. The other thing I wanted to point out is, can I mention you on that you did a great show on Court TV? Can I mention that? If not, we can edit this.
Yeah,
I saw that. You and Vinny Politan, who I think is fantastic. I love Court TV.
Right.
I love Vinny Politan. He does a fantastic job. But you and he had a moment. When, I forget whether you asked him or he asked you, what was the motive in this case? And can you recount that for me?
Sure. I think
the moment that you were both speechless. You were both speechless for about, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah. I think, with Adam, the immediate motive for the murder itself was his impulsivity, his anger, and he flew off in a rage at Harmony.
Right.
However, the motive of why would Adam Montgomery even want the responsibility of another child when he's not working and he's out, allegedly dealing drugs and selling guns and living that life, and having, a wife who's herself got substance abuse issues and who's pregnant, and there's two other children in the picture. Why would he want another one? And the answer is in the assistance checks, the support checks that they were receiving from the state. It was a stream of income. And I believe that's why Adam wanted Harmony. Yes, it's his flesh and blood. Maybe on some level, it's his daughter, and he accepted that this is my daughter. I want to have a relationship. But overriding that, and the way people like that may think, Vinny and I both agreed that it's more likely that he wanted that steady stream of money. And the proof of that is, after Harmony was gone, that steady stream of money kept coming in. Kayla was working at a Dunkin' Donuts actually, that's in question too. I think she had lost her job, but they were saying that, and the reason she did have a job at Dunkin' Donuts at one time, I think in Bedford. And the cover story was that he dropped off Kayla at the Dunkin' Donuts while he went to Massachusetts to drop off Harmony. The investigation revealed that Kayla was not working that day and had not worked for a long time. But at one point, she was working at a Dunkin' Donuts. That job went away. They get this money. I'm not sure how much those checks were. Probably wasn't a whole lot of money, but to them, when they're living in a car, a few $100s is a lot of money.
And if they had the substance abuse issues, I mean, that money is fueling a habit. But how despicable is that? And it's only a rhetorical question. How despicable is that to want a child just so you can get those checks, and then after the child passes, just to keep cashing those checks for a long period of time, just to keep cashing them and cashing them and cashing them. And I've never really understood that. I mean, I agree with the moment that you had with Vinny Politano. I agree with that, how despicable it is. But, you had two kids. I had two stepdaughters. That money, I've never known anybody ever to say that money that you get is enough. Kids are expensive.
Yes, they are.
We're
still expensive.
over and above the responsibility and the duty that a parent has to take care of a kid. Kids are expensive, and that money, from people that I've talked to, that money doesn't come close to taking care. And this girl, Harmony, she had special needs. She had some special medical conditions that required that a caring parent, anyhow, would make sure. Sure, I guess they probably had assistance with Medicaid or Medicare, or whatever. I'm sure they had, but over and above that, a kid needs clothing, glasses, shoes, stuff for school, and that money never takes care of it. And I doubt that any of the money they were getting was going for all that stuff.
Right.
I just doubt
And
it.
Adam, from the other trial, he was always looking for the next fix. You know, that was very insightful to sit through the other trial of Adam Montgomery on the gun charges. And when he found out that this other woman's husband was away and there was a gun in the house, that I need the money, and he was convicted of it, going in and stealing the guns and selling them. And that was the life, always looking for the next fix, always looking for some money. So
and that's all they really cared about.
That's right.
All they really cared
it makes
about.
perfect sense in that scenario. That's why he wanted harmony, because it's an income stream. It's so simple, and that's what I mean when I was saying before. It's a world that we just cannot understand. It's got its own twisted logic, and I'm glad we can't see it. But it's a very dark place, and it's awful that these children are living that way. And Harmony is gone. She's paid the ultimate price, and all of us have for that. But right now, there are other kids in that same situation. It's awful.
It is awful, and I've heard a little bit from reading and just from what I've heard about the circumstances under which she died, and it's horrendous. What I've heard is they Adam and Kayla were driving around in their car. I guess they had money for gas. They're driving around, and poor little Harmony had issues, and she went to the bathroom, and Adam reached back and slapped her. And that's how he dealt with the problem, rather than trying to deal with the problem in a way a normal, loving, caring parent would. He slapped her, and he would slap her, 3, 4, 5 times. And this particular evening, he slapped her. And
I think, Andy, he hit her with a closed fist. I don't think he slapped
exactly.
her. He punched her.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. You corrected me. That's fine.
Yeah, I think I don't have it right in front of me, but if I remember correctly, Kayla said that he had a closed fist, and he reached back there and punched her 3 or 4 times.
Yep.
And then said, "I think something along the lines. I think I
seriously hurt her. I think I really hurt her this time. I think I really hurt her this time. But then
nobody got her any help.
But then they kept driving around. They went out for fast food. I forget which restaurant they went to, but they went to Burger King. They got their dinner. They're driving around. Never mind getting a Happy Meal for the kid and saying, "Hey, you want?" They ate their dinner. They're driving around, and only then, at that time, did they discover that she was no longer responsive. And just so you're right, it's a world. That's what made me think of this. It's a whole world that none of us can really understand. I don't want to understand it. In one sense, I do want to understand it, but in another sense, no, I really don't want to understand it. But maybe people that are in a position to make decisions should understand it, because there's just such a dichotomy of the haves and the have-nots, the people that aren't into this world and the people that are into this world, that boy, I don't know, Bob. I really appreciate your time here. I don't want to impose upon you for any more time, but do you have any closing thoughts for us before we gavel ourselves out of session?
I would just say, always keep Harmony in mind for people listening and watching this, that there are other Harmonies out there. We've seen other cases of horrific child abuse that ended in death. And if Harmony's case is going to have any kind of meaning, she's lost. She's gone. Literally, her life is gone, and they have never found her body. The only thing that exists of Harmony right now are the memories that people have of her and those photographs that you have, those beautiful photos.
Mm-hmm.
But try to, I hope people remember Harmony and don't close a blind eye to her condition and why this even happened, because there's some, we all have struggles. We all struggle to pay our bills. We all struggle to move forward in life. But there are other people facing a mountain that we don't understand, and something needs to be done about it. We're the richest country in the world, and it's really unfathomable that something like this could happen.
It is absolutely well said. Lainey, do you have any closing thoughts?
In a similar vein, unfortunately, a lot of people can already empathize having a loved one that struggles with addiction, but for those who aren't able to, it's a sickness. It can take someone good and turn them into someone who they're not, and it can take someone who already has bad habits and bad tendencies and make that 10 times worse than it would have been. I think it's, obviously with Crystal, it's really heartbreaking to see, because at the end of the day, it sounded like she did care about her kid. And the fact that Harmony was even, visiting her dad, be it less than a weekend's worth of time, there was at least some attempt. And as bad as the situation was, that she was taken out of, Crystal's care and put into foster care and put into Adam's care, I think that there's a very strong differentiating factor between, a mother who's at least trying to check in on her kid and notices that something's wrong with her kid versus, someone who has a violent crime and it's getting a lot worse. So people watching this, remember not to villainize addiction, because it can take someone good and turn them into someone that they're not, even though we see these cases where it takes someone who it may not be obviously the best parent and turn them into beyond the monster. It's very sad.
Yeah, I mean, don't give up on this whole slice of society. That's what I would say. These are important cases, important stories. Harmony's life mattered, and that's why we're so interested in this, and why, hopefully something changes, something positive happens, that people just say enough is enough. We cannot have another Harmony.
Right. Okay, Bob, thank you very much for your time.
For anybody who made it this far into the video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe with all of your thoughts and opinions down below.
You have been watching About the Law, a production of the law offices of Andrew D. Myers in Methuen in the Merrimack Valley of Massachusetts, and in Derry, just outside of Manchester, New Hampshire. Remember to click the like and subscribe buttons down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to share it with your friends and others. If you'd like to talk to me about an injury case, a car accident, a slip and fall, a serious bodily injury case, or some other case, please feel free to contact me. I'd love to talk to you. You can contact us through my website at attorney-myers.com. We have a contact us block, or you can call on one of the telephone numbers we've given there, or you can email me at andrew@attorney-myers.com. The foregoing is offered for informational purposes only. It is not intended as and does not constitute legal advice. Laws vary widely from state to state. You should rely only on the advice given to you during a personal consultation by a local attorney thoroughly familiar with state laws and the area of practice in which your concern lies. This podcast must be and hereby is labeled advertisement in some jurisdictions.
All right,
And
now you
that's
can stop
that.
recording. And that's that.